And my journey to the Rise of Skywalker continues. It's time to talk about The Empire Strikes Back. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a cinematastic day. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Before I give my thoughts on this, I'd love to hear yours down in comments below. Let me know what you think of this film, how it holds up to the rest of the Star Wars franchise. Was it good, was it bad, or just somewhere in between? And before I begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here, because I'm going through the Skywalker Saga as we go up to Star Wars Episode 9, and then I'll be giving my ranking of all of them at the very end. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back brings back all the original cast and all of the original characters as we get a bigger threat from the Empire as they come to try and take over the rebels and destroy their little base on Hoth as they're hiding out. And then we get the Battle of Hoth that leads Luke to go to Dagobah and to find Yoda. And as Han, Leia, Chewbacca, R2-D2, and C-3PO escape on the Millennium Falcon, constantly being chased by the Empire, Luke later finds out he has to go and rescue them as the story moves on. Starting with the positives, because this is a Star Wars film, I really enjoy it and I already have a bias towards it because this is really what got me into movies a lot more as a franchise, and I just really enjoy where the story goes, how it flows well, and just all the characters involved within. And especially with the Battle of Hoth, you get this large-scale battle that's, in a sense, really well crafted for being produced in 1980. And really the way it's made is with just some props and some other things that makes it really look real with the way they use the camera work and all that's involved. And then also with the Cloud City scenes at the end, it's just really compelling story with what Luke has to face as he goes after Darth Vader, what he learns to become the man he is in Episode 6 and becoming a Jedi Knight, and just all the story that's captured in between with the different romance between Han and Leia and just all the quirky characters from C-3PO, Chewbacca, and R2-D2, all of those different characters, and the threat of the Empire really stands strong in this film. So moving on to the negatives, as much as people really rate this film high and overrate it in my personal opinion, this film really never worked for me as the pacing is kind of quite inconsistent, and the way it's done, the story is portrayed is compelling enough, but it doesn't have an extra flair that really makes it stand out from the franchise. And really overall, I counted only 7 TIE fighters in total, and for an Empire Strikes Back, it doesn't have the large-scale battle that you really expect from that. And really, as the Empire does succeed in some ways in what it's trying to do, I never really felt a huge strike back from the Empire in accordance to the rebellion and how it affects them, because really the rebellion is never involved with the Empire. Really the only thing that's being struck back at is with Han Solo and Leia and just all of the involvement of what goes on with that. So already the title is a tiny bit misleading in that regard with how it goes off. And in Episode 6, it's sort of resolved pretty quickly and with how all that works out. And so it doesn't quite work as well. And even with all of the scenes that are shot, there's only 2 long scenes that are shown consistently and really portray the story in a long manner. And while all of the scenes, though filmed in short little segments, are all matching up together and all tell the story consistently, they're really short in regards to the fact that you don't necessarily get long enough of a time to really feel the danger of the smaller dangers, especially with the Wampa and with the Droid. It's just sort of a back and forth scene from going to Luke to back to Han and Leia, and just everything that happens in between just doesn't line up quite the way I want it to. And the shorter scenes are filmed in a short way that doesn't quite make you really compelled to understand everything that's going on, and everything that the dramatic tension just does not work as well, even with the good music score involved. Without getting into really big spoilers, just an example of this comes when you send out the probe droid from the Imperials. We get to see the Imperials acknowledge that there's a base on there and that there's a presence that's disrupting it as they acknowledge the rebels. And then it goes back to the rebels who acknowledge that the Imperials acknowledge them. And then it goes back to the Imperials that acknowledge that the rebels acknowledge the Imperials. And it's just really a way of, it's kind of odd the way it's all set up in that regard. And then within the story, it just switches back and forth between Han and Leia and Luke, and Han and Leia and Luke in a way that's just sort of repetitive, and you don't necessarily get quite enough time in that specific scene to really understand what all is going on, in the regard that you get the story and how it all flows out, but you never quite get the tension involved with that, because you get to understand the story, but you're not going to see Luke get killed by a Wampa, and really that's in the beginning of the film, and really lasts for less than 15 minutes, which almost seems like a small little danger that adds to the really culture of Star Wars. But you never really get the grasp of time and the grasp of the immensity of the Star Wars universe and galaxy within this movie. It expands it just a little by adding a couple different planets and Hoth and Dagobah, but really you don't get quite as much as a lot of the other films, which makes me feel like this film sticks out as one that does not quite line up with all of the others. It's quite different than the others in that regard, and really only the planet battle that sticks out is in the Hoth battle, because even on Cloud City it still doesn't quite feel like you're on land, because really they're not, and it just feels like another scene, like if they were in a cruiser, and there's not even a big battle that concludes the story, besides if you look at Darth Vader and Luke's battle, but there's not an immense large scale that especially contributes to Empire Strikes Back title. And because of this, while it's memorable for its Cloud City scene and its Hoth scene, and it's sort of the Empire chasing down the Millennium Falcon, you're not really feeling the strong danger of the Millennium Falcon getting destroyed and Han and Leia just getting obliterated. It's just not necessarily as strong there, and while the story is there and it's interesting enough and you understand what's going on, there's nothing that quite pops out and adds a flair to the Star Wars universe as much as there is in some of the other movies. But as much as I've been talking about the negatives and how this really is quite different than the rest of the Star Wars movie and the franchise, it's still quite enjoyable and watchable in the sense that it's part of the Star Wars universe. It's part of what really got me into movies. So it's still a little nostalgic to me, even though I didn't grow up watching it. I really only started watching the Star Wars franchise 8 years ago, but it's still good enough that makes me really enjoy the film as part of the Star Wars universe. And it still is the middle section of leading from the introduction of the characters and all of the story leading to the third installment of this franchise. So while it doesn't hold up quite as well, I still find it quite watchable, and that therefore I have to rate it simply 6.8 out of 10. And those were just my personal thoughts. I know this is quite a big unpopular opinion, but I'd love to hear yours down in comments below. Please leave some explanation as to why you may love it, or even if you agree with me or understand where I'm coming from, let me know down in comments below. Let's have a nice, respectful discussion over the Star Wars franchise, because we all have different opinions on what we have wanted from them. So if you enjoyed this video and review, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here, because I'm going to be concluding the rest of the Skywalker Saga reviews leading up to episode 9 with a ranking at the end. And be sure to check out my Star Wars playlist for when all the other reviews are in there, and also be sure to check out this video that YouTube suggests specifically for you and that you may really enjoy. And I'll be back for movie reviews, rankings, and more.